And welcome to Live Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a famous starship captain once said, I do believe, shiver me timbers. And you know, as another famous starship captain once said, who we're about to hear a lot more from soon, wherever our mission takes us, we will try to have a little fun along the way.
Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Matu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek. You know, one of us is a real doctor.
And almost 2 years into this, we still haven't figured out who that might be, but we'll leave it to you to determine that on this week's episode. On this week's episode, we're talking small first contacts. You'll figure out a little bit more about what that means in a moment. We're taking some inspiration from this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy, My Progeny.
I thought we were talking about like the First Federation in Baylock and the little gold guys, the Mythonites in Journey to Babel.
We can do whatever we want, Larry.
No, small first contacts.
Oh, okay. I see what you. So let us know what's your favorite episode involving first contact, although it might not be what you think we're talking about. But before we get to that, Larry, what is this Life Support Live weekly adventure we're on?
It's all about keeping everybody in the dark until the last second what it is we're talking about. Wait, we can't be called on the carpet, you know.
We succeed very well at that.
Gray or otherwise, yeah. No, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Maybe you're new to Life Support Live. Maybe you're one of the lifers. Not to be confused with lifers like in Lifetimers, but lifers. We're here. We're gonna have a lot of fun geeking out on a Star Trek theme across all the series. We're taking inspiration from the current Trek, which at the moment is the second quarter of the first season of Prodigy. But we're gonna take this theme and shoot across with your help, everybody's help out there. Check out the theme across Star Trek, all the series. And then the two of us deliver a little something extra. Dr. Ali will talk to you about some life hints, maybe some closer look at that, a deep dive on the mental health side there. And I'll have a deep dive, some aspect of production and the industry for the real life world that I represent coming out of Trekland. So we're real glad. If you have not yet, say your hellos in the chat. That's the chat is huge here. We love our community, and we're glad to be back with you again for another Saturday.
Yeah, I just
you think after 2 years I might start getting that a little more succinct. Yeah.
I like Christoph's we're lifetime lifers for the time being. Cracked me up seeing that. It's good to see people. Good to see Glinda here. Paula, good afternoon from Indiana. Good morning from California, I should say.
From Janeway country.
Janeway country. Yeah. Livy's back here. We got all our folks. Nathaniel, Andrew, howdy, my friend. Good to see you all. So So, Larry, this week's episode was inspired by First Contact, the Star Trek Prodigy episode.
Con-tact.
Yeah. This was an episode that involved First Contact, but not as we know it, Jim. But it kind of got us thinking about a topic that we haven't really done, which is
thinking. You actually do it.
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time. Most of the time, no. Not this week, not so much. But we were thinking about doing First Contact in a little bit different spin. Do you want to tell the folks how we're thinking about defining this?
No.
Okay.
No,
Page true.
I just love those setups. No. See, I mean, yeah. So you look at, and we don't want to spoil it, but here we're going to tell you exactly what happened, all of it. No. There's an encounter between our intrepid young bunch of rookie wannabe starship people with Janeway's holographic help until they turn her off. We had kind of a first contact situation, but they're not Starfleet folks, so they kind of bungle it. Yeah, they're learning. But there's really a second level to the first contact. It's really something about what struck me was about the naivete of their supposed leader Dahl. The rest of the bunch kind of has an instinct. I'd say human, but they're not all human. None of them are.
None of them are
But,
human.
yeah, none of them are human. But they have an instinct about the new person in their midst that's kind of taken over leading them into this first contact. In fact, they're on a mission or they're on a job. And can we see? Yeah, it's been all over the place. It's a Ferengi, not just a Ferengi, but a female Ferengi who's looking very normal, which is interesting.
Female.
It's interesting update to that revolution led by what was her name? What was her
Quark's
name,
mom?
Ollie?
Quark's
Yeah.
mom?
Yeah.
Moogie. Oh, okay.
You're not getting away with Quark's mom. No. So I mean, but
Moogie.
which gave way to this rise of, not all first contacts are culture to culture and government to government and, my people to your. A lot of our first contacts are just us and somebody else. Our first contact with somebody. And as I was thinking, sometimes it's like our first contact with a brand new concept or idea. It doesn't have to be another person, but something that tests us and how we react to a new situation, basically.
Yeah.
Whether it's a living creature that's going to affect us in a more organic way in our face and give us back what we give them, or it's something bigger than just a person. It's like a whole idea, a whole concept, a whole paradigm that we have to get our head around. And sometimes it's a matter of life and death, and sometimes it's a matter of quality of life. But so rather than just, it's a first contact, that's been done 47 billion times to death, maybe bring it down in scope a little bit, which was my idea. I think I finally beat you into submission.
You did beat me. You did beat me into submission to this idea. I like this idea.
I thought you might have an opening or two or a thought or two to say.
I do. Just what or do, but I do. I think it's also a good theme for Star Trek Prodigy because last week's episode, which is really, if you haven't seen it, last week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy is quite a celebration of Star Trek. That's all I'll say. But it's also
last two have been
Star Trek Prodigy is these characters getting introduced to these ideas, and they're not quite in Star Trek, or not Star Trek, but Starfleet Academy, but they are learning about a lot of these different ideas, and the whole show is sort of designed to be an introduction for kids to these Star Trek ideas. So it's cool. This is something that happens almost every week in Star Trek Prodigy. So I think this is a cool idea. And just to remind folks here, we see I was thinking of Ishka as well, Rom and Quark's mom. In what that revolution is definitely carrying forward. This is our first time we see a female Ferengi since the end of Deep Space Nine, so it's great to see that.
So it's been like in canon time, it's been about 5 years since that, 5-6 years. Of course, they're out on the frontier, so maybe she's been able to be out as a female and operating this way for a while. We still don't know the exact name. Dahl is young, and she raised him, she says. So if she was out working on her own, she may have been, could care less what was happening on Ferenginar.
Right. We do not know. But there's a lot of examples that we were thinking about here. Larry, which one should we get started? We've got a lot of examples all over.
We can go chronological. Yeah,
chronological.
I mean, here's the thing.
Does that mean Enterprise or does that mean TOS?
I meant sorry, good point. I meant canon chronological.
Canon. But, do we mean Enterprise or do we mean the original series?
Oh,
you mean production?
Canon of production. Oh yeah, you're gonna beat it out of me one way or another.
Yes, I am.
A beating. Why am I going with this?
I need direction.
Very violent today. Okay. Let's start with that. Wrath of Khan.
Let's start. It's always a good place to start.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So we're talking about the way we encounter people, and we, what's our first impressions, and how do we act on them, and do we make wise decisions based on our sense input and our thought. It's like, well, that's the plot of every show. I mean, I'm always saying that. So, and a couple of these, what we're laughing about, that every episode of Discovery is about this, and almost every episode of Lower Decks is about this. But Yeah, and I think probably a lot of the original series are, but I jumped right to the movie.
To Wrath of Khan. Yeah, I think this is a good place for us to start. It gives people a sense of how we're thinking about this topic. So, of course, First Contacts, you would think like Star Trek First Contact, but we're talking in this way of talking about small First Contacts. This is
Small
really,
f, small c.
yeah, this is
Ignore this. Small f, small c.
yeah. This is the first time Kirk is meeting David, his son. This is the first contact he's having with knowing that he's a father and also meeting his child. And we see that happen throughout this movie, and you see the relationship continue into the next movie. But this is
Well, to be fair, that fist fight, the fisticuffs, he doesn't know he knows David,
yes.
and he has a son, David, but he doesn't know that's David.
He does know he has a son, David, at that point.
Right, I think so.
Does he? How would he know
I thought
that?
the fact he didn't know that was David.
Really?
Doesn't he say that's David?
Does he? I don't know. I guess I'm going to be watching Wrath of Khan right after this. Our comments, our community here will definitely correct us in just a moment.
Yeah, Kirk knows he has a son. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Charlotte, so.
Thank you, Scott. Scott quoted. That's the line I have in my head. He
Yeah.
says, "Is that David?" So he knows David is a thing. He just didn't know that thing was that thing in front of him. Yeah.
So yeah, it is the first time he's meeting David.
Like, whoa! Don't. Did I? Okay.
I don't know, Larry. I don't know. I just woke up.
I saw Wrath of Khan in the theater, Ollie.
Well, I was at the Con of Wrath, and you can't prove otherwise.
You you were a later come Johnny, so yeah.
This is what I was gonna say. I can always count on Charlotte to correct me. Thank you, Charlotte. I raise my nebulated coffee to you. So yeah, Larry, let's talk about this example, not just debate over the context of
And
this.
no, I'm not judging anybody here. It was another. Oh, look, it's another Kirk jumps into an encounter, or it's another cowboy diplomatic encounter. There, it's not like he knew that was David. My point was, it's not like he knew that was David, and he's taking it. He did now. His first contact with David instantly turns into, oh my God, I just was trying to punch out my son.
Yeah, not a good move, Dad.
Yeah.
But even once they know that they are father and son, there isn't this wonderful moment of connection or catharsis or anything like that. Their relationship is really starting. I don't even say it's starting from scratch. It's already starting from a distrust. Because of Kirk's role as Starfleet and David's role as a scientist who's been working on the Genesis device, just because they are related doesn't mean they have any type of relationship that you might expect for a parent and a child. It takes time, and time is a theme in that movie that plays out in a different way than it does in Generations.
Time is the proto-matter in which we reassemble ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because David starts off with a huge, slanderous view of Kirk.
He does.
The military is always out to get us. He's just a pawn of the military, and so he's looking down at him that way too. But that's the distant, unknown that he doesn't know in practice.
Yeah, and I love that criticism. We haven't really seen that criticism too much of Starfleet, but as Cairo's saying right over here, David has no clue what the name of his father is or that he was standing there in front of him. He doesn't even know.
It's a mutual clueless first contact.
And he doesn't know who that man is and what he stands for. He hasn't watched all those episodes of Star Trek. He hasn't sat through the motion picture and gushed on about how amazing of a film that is. Although I wonder which version David would watch. Would he watch the director's cut or the...
This is the worst all-time anal fan question. If David Marcus was a fan, would he prefer the original theatrical or the director's? I dare anyone since the dawn of time, including the prophets, to find out anyone has ever uttered that question.
No one cares about that question.
Leadership moderator ever. Yeah. Okay.
No one cares about that, Larry, because everyone knows it would be the director's cut. Moving right along here, we've got a few examples from TNG, but one of the first examples we really came across here
had some nostalgia connected to the original edition if he'd seen it in the theater.
That's true. He might. Wow, we're actually debating this. Let's go here to our. This is from.
Let's go there.
Let's go there. Let's go to the last outpost, and what we have here is our first contact, our actual first contact with. Our first contact, the audience's first contact with Ferengi. It's not the Federation's first contact with Ferengi, but
it's not even the unofficial human first contact with Ferengi.
No. And at this point, Jean-Luc Picard has already had quite an encounter with the Ferengi that led to, would you say the loss of Stargazer? What would you call it? Yeah.
That was the,
Yeah. No?
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. That's when he lives the battle. Yes.
Yeah. So it's really the first time we are encountering Ferengi. And I think some people on that away mission.
He does not know Damon Bach is his son. Oh, wait, that's a different thing. Okay.
What a turn of events that would be. Oh my gosh, Larry.
That would make this end of the 7th season a lot different. Okay.
All good things would play out a little differently. So I think it is the first time some people on that away mission are encountering Ferengi. Am I correct about that?
Well, right. And the whole point was the first encounter with Ferengis was a little bit like the first encounter with Romulans, that started the Romulan War. I mean, that they refer back to from Balance of Terror, that they didn't see them. They didn't really encounter them face to face, voice to voice, whatever. And because part of this is, people are saying, well, Last Outpost, Larry Ali, you just said not actual first contact of cultures, it was individuals. Yeah, but my point here was that they'd had a diplomatic first contact, but this is the first time they're really dealing with Ferengi. They're seeing that they're not ominous, they're short, and they're dealing with them as people trying to understand their psychology and individuals and not, the whole culture.
And they're not doing so well. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about The Last Outpost is...
because no one else ever does.
Well, we talk about Deep Space Nine a lot with the Ferengi. And this is the first time we are meeting the Ferengi. And Larry, definitely for me... this episode set up, and the other Next Generation episodes with Ferengi set up a prejudice against them. Not only of them being greedy and being chauvinistic and being like these, caricatures, really. But I just didn't like them as villains. I didn't like them as characters. I didn't really like Ferengi episodes. I thought that they were very predictable. There was nothing really I liked about Ferengi. When Ferengi came on an episode, I was like, well, we know what's going to happen now. They're going to do something greedy and shifty and shady. And it really wasn't until Deep Space Nine where we got more complicated characters that persisted throughout episodes that weren't just daemons, that they were kind of, your average Ferengi who didn't own a moon
There were Justins and Jennifers too. No, sorry.
They were just doing their thing, and we got to get to know these characters, and I definitely had a much different reaction. But thinking about these
Well,
small
there you
first
go. You fell
contacts.
for Armin Shimmerman's master plan.
Yes, yes, yes. That started right here. That started
Hmm.
right here. He's the one in the front, right? If I
Right.
remember. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Who is not Quark. He is not Quark there.
Right. No, no, no.
He's just another Ferengi. Um,
Tech. Boy, off the top of my head, I'm just trying to. Anyway, they all had individual names too, because if that had been like if that had been like an early Enterprise episode, the aliens they'd just be Ferengi 1, Ferengi 2, Ferengi 3. Oh, Brandon. Okay,
um,
there you go. See, yes, that's what he said, Libby. That's what he's saying.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it wasn't on you, and it wasn't on the actors. It was on the concept.
Well,
Well,
you mentioned this in another K3, I think, Larry.
Yeah.
That episode was not the vision of what that episode was supposed to be. The weapons were not the way it was. They were supposed to be much more menacing, but they didn't quite have the money to make it happen.
Well, and also I think Gene was on this is like an original series type story, but like Gene was on vacation. Armin will say this. I mean, everybody when I first it was 5 years later, but everybody that I first interviewed for the companion, nobody was there except the actors. I didn't really talk to the actors, but I think Bob Justman said that by the time they saw dailies a day or two later, like they weren't happy with. I mean, they saw dailies every day, but they weren't happy with the Ferengi on stage, and not the actors. It was just the whole the way they were going to the whole monkey kind of loping thing. But they'd shot so much they couldn't go back and reshoot a lot of that, and they were upset with the director, and they never had the director back. But yeah.
Yeah, it was not the greatest.
Armin takes it all on himself now.
Yeah, well, that's what Charlotte's saying over here. What
Yeah.
about Armin's first contact with Ferengi in that episode? He stated he's rather embarrassed by that episode and took the opportunity to do it right for the role of Quark, which he fabulously did.
Which he fabulously did. But I just challenge Armin on the fact that in the day, he will take all the burden of the TNG Ferengi on. He'll say like, "Well, I was the first one on screen, and it's all my fault." And I'm like, "No, you had director and creatives around you, and there were six. There were three of you, plus the one on screen." And anyway, it's like he likes to be the martyr for the Ferengi because he had the opportunity to fix it. If there'd never been a Quark, I don't think Armin would be out talking about it at all. But anyway, he had Quark to himself.
Right. And we've got a few other next generation examples. Larry, should we jump to this one? This is from Force of Nature.
Oh, I was going to say, hey everybody, name the episode, and somebody's going to say that's not an episode, that's a book cover without the text on it. Yeah. Yeah, name the episode, everybody. This is Purple Rain, the Prince episode. No. Sorry.
That would be amazing.
And also rather stupid, yeah.
A sentient prince takes over the holodeck and just wants to rock out.
And just has a 20%. Captain, Prince has got to give up the holodeck. You never should have made him sentient. He's been in there. He's been concertizing for 37 days.
That would be amazing.
No, that's Force of Nature. This concept they've been trying to do forever, a Joe Menosky concept, where basically they find out that he was trying to do a corollary to oil and pollution and global warming in that what if warp drive is seen to be this horrible polluter of space? They have to they're killing themselves slowly if they keep using warp drive.
Yeah, and who knew? All you have to do is just go like this, and you're good. You're solid.
Put a filter on that smokestack, and you're good.
This is a first contact with this idea of pollution of.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so first contact with this idea, which is more resonant now than it was when that aired, given how much many parts of the world have experienced aspects of climate change, how much we've been driving a lot of that with our pollution, and what we, they do a good job.
Debating it instead of just doing something about it.
Right. They approach it in a way that we have not. But what's kind of happened here, in many ways, they approach it in a more aspirational way, which I wish we did as well. But the way they approach it is, okay, well, let's look at the data, not him, but the concept of it, and let's try to understand this, and let's see what we can do about it. Often what happens when you have first contact with a idea that is conflicting directly with your actions is you approach that idea as your body approaches a virus. It attacks it. It tries to demobilize it. It tries to stop it. It tries to weaken it. It tries to find the holes in that. It tries to rationalize your behavior. And that's a lot of what we've done as our actions, our direct actions, our daily driving, our daily movements, our flying. Flying is a huge contributor to CO2. It's bad, Larry, and our actions are very bad, and we have a hard time grappling with that. I wish we react to it more like they do in Force of Nature.
Well, we're getting there finally. I just love how we lost 30 or 40 years of people not just doing the rational thing, because it's not that people were stupid. There was a moneyed interest with a fight to hold off change until someone could figure out how to profit from the change, which finally did happen. Green energy and all of that. So, oh well.
We're on our way, slowly but surely. Let's talk about a couple of other two very iconic characters we have First Contact coming up with. Let's jump here to the Best of Both Worlds, and we're not necessarily talking about First Contact with the Borg, right, Larry? Who are we talking about here?
Well, this is another one of those cases. I think if maybe it's because they're major villains and they get adversaries and they get a lot of screen time. But the Borg are a little bit like the Ferengi, like Q-Who, which was Q throwing us in the path of the Borg in second season. This is into the third season, and it's the Locutus. The two we all know. If you're watching us today and I'm spoiling.
Oh, we know.
For you, then you need to go. Well, not you, but although I don't know, you didn't come along till Star Trek 6 or whatever. So I don't know. Never will surprise me. Might surprise me again. But the way the Ferengi were like first encountered before they were met, and the way the Romulans were encountered without whatever, and the Ferengi. If the Borg were actually encountered by Archer, that pioneering captain who kept having all these first contacts that no one wrote the reports up for, so he never gets credit for all the first contacts that he had.
They still used paper back then, I think. For that.
They still used paper, and they did not do they didn't fill in the blank on name of species encountered. Unknown. Oh well, But the Borg, but so that doesn't count. But this is the first, and there were. A couple of Borg beamed over to kind of suck up data from the Enterprise on their first contact, and people are like, "Oh my God!" and they're shooting at them, and the shields coming up and all that. But I think of Best of Both Worlds really is the first time they're thinking about how to deal with them outside the crisis moment. And I don't know if this is resonating here. So what we're talking about, they're not talking about how to deal with the collective, although the collective is supposed to be, if you meet one drone, you've met them all, I guess. But when you've got the entire, Borg Tabernacle Choir talking to you as one until they come up with a speaker like Locutus or later on the Borg Queen. But you do have a chance to deal with individual drones, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it feels like they're thinking about what that looks like. So in that scene they get it that they can just walk around and no one cares about them until they provoke. And they get a defensive response.
I like what Andrew said here. First Contact protocols didn't exist until after Archer. I think there's even a moment in one of those Enterprise episodes where he says, maybe someday we'll develop some type of directive, perhaps a prime directive that can guide us in these situations. But until then, I have to figure this out myself. So I
Then
think
they get
that.
back to the ship and he's like, oh, Hoshi, Malcolm, how many times have I told you? Ask them their name before we leave.
Oh man! So in Best of Both Worlds, we do have that first contact with Locutus. We do have this first contact with some form of communication with the Borg. Not only do the Borg gain Locutus, but by the end of the second parter, we gain back Picard, and in doing so, a deeper understanding of the Borg and how they function, and that continues to play out. It continues to play out to Star Trek Picard with the XP storyline. Maybe it'll play out in season 2 of Picard. Who knows? Who knows what the heck's
of the Borg and an understanding of how to skyrocket your ratings numbers.
Yes, and your box office returns. But there's an. Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm actually looking at the chat, and Livy says, would Little Green Men count as first contact? And like, okay, chronologically, you know, the Ferengier in 1947, not 2162. But, you know, who knew? Again, I don't think
I think who knew is the question of that. Was that classified and buried?
Yeah. As opposed to early Earth Starfleet, that Air Force base at Roswell, those folks did write down the Ferengi name, but it was immediately tanked and stuck in a box next to the Ark of the Covenant somewhere stuck away in Area 41 and 47, whatever.
The Ark of the Covenant. Larry, I saw Melanie post this. We are the cyborgs. Is that where the name Borg came from? Is it just from cyborgs?
Well, basically, yeah, ish.
I never connected the dots about that.
Well, in the 80s, cyberpunk was an emerging science fiction genre.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Okay, let's talk about the first contact here that we had with Ro Laren.
This was the first example. When I tried to put arms around this concept, this is actually the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, well, then I'm going to allow you to speak to it, Larry.
Oh, thanks. No. I didn't read the book. No, I mean, it's great because they came up. I could do a mini K3 here. They came up with this character just to inject some friction. After Will Wheaton left, they wanted some friction on the bridge. In the Happy Dappy TNG family, they were wanting something, and this is like Jerry Taylor's addition into the mix, and Michael wanting something fresh. And so they come up with Ro, so she's not, and then they make her a Bajoran, and they invent all this Bajoran backstory. And I was just remembering, I was answering this question in my magazine column just recently. It's like there was no, in fact, I think this issue, they didn't invent the Bajorans for DS9. They were actually, but they didn't plant them in Next Gen to set them up for DS9 either. They were actually invented as a backstory for Ro to explain why she's in Starfleet and yet kind of apart. And she has this whole "my people are troubled," background. And Bajor is not a member. And as we know, if Worf can be in Starfleet, then anybody can. And you've got Nog later and lots of other ones. But, non-members who have individual, natives in Starfleet. So she's a great example. But and she's a pioneer. Now, within a year, you've got Sito Jaxa, who's Bajoran at the Academy with Wesley. But maybe she's a pioneer. They don't say she's the first Bajoran. But this whole thing about Riker giving her shit about her earring and all of this stuff is like kind of the thing of seeing her as an individual or that's an other, not. So anyway, she's a humanoid. She's not a weird amorphous alien. She's not some other completely wacky culture. She's a humanoid bipedal. So it's perfect for her to be in the crew. So it's perfect for her to have this, TNG era headbutting and bring what they wanted to bring to the cast mix, but also have it be canon and totally understandable, and a hoop to get over. Like it's easy to be rubbed the wrong way by her, just the same way it was kind of easy in a different way to be rubbed the wrong way by Barclay. You know, people who are a little out of the mold, the standard mold. Yeah. So you can yell at Riker and some of the rest of the crew for, oh my God, she's a troublemaker. And she'd been in prison. She had been, court-martialed. And here's a redeemer. Here's a pre-Paris redeemer that we're going to redeem. And then Guinan comes in and, spouts wisdom and everything gets a little better. But she's still a prickly pear, even when she's on the heroic side. If they didn't abandon her, I always want to call it Crisis. But when the ship they're cut up into pieces, more metaphorically, and she's arguing with Troy on the bridge about what to do.
Yeah. I love Ro. I love the storyline. I love all the background. I love how we have Ro in many ways to thank for so much of Deep Space Nine and the backstory that became relevant for the Bajorans. And I mean,
the point of today's show is TNG is at its best when it's just setting up DS9.
Oh man, as a Niner here, I will not debate with that. There's a lot of great stuff related to our topic and Ro here, and you kind of captured a lot of it here with the relationship between Riker and Ro, and it's very clear that he is coming into this relationship with a lot of stereotypes of. There's some prejudice there. We just had a comment.
That ain't your pizza bacon Starfleet reserves, Riker.
Yeah, Charlotte's got a comment here. It still really bothers me when Riker makes her remove her earring because it's against regulation, yet Worf is just strolling around with his war sash. And I think the reason there is there is some prejudice because of her past, maybe because she was imprisoned, because of the tactics she used as whether you want to call it a freedom fighter, a terrorist. It's bringing up that kind of stuff here that Riker's bringing to the relationship, and so is Ro. Ro's bringing up her stuff with Starfleet as well, and that plays out throughout their episodes. That episode, Larry, that you were talking about, where they're all sort of their memory has
disaster.
Yes, yeah. Such a great. Data's the bartender. He's like, well, I guess I'm the android life form. I guess I'm just. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, it's Data's head on a shelf. That's one of the other.
Oh, images. Right. But they end up they get kind of romantically involved in that episode.
It's nothing to do with Christmas, but it's still fun. Head on a shelf. It's the new marketing trend. Yeah.
But I love that they kind of get romantically involved there in that episode. And then in...
oh, no, you're thinking of Conundrum when they lose their memories are wiped.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Oh, you're thinking of Disaster where they're trapped. I'm thinking of Conundrum where they're... Yes.
Now we're... Okay, now we're straight. Yes. There's the latency.
But I was just about to bring up the episode where they're out of phase, her and Geordi. Phase 2? Timescape. Right, not Phase 2. That is the show that never was.
No, that's not Timescape. What is it?
You'll find it.
Frozen time.
But in that episode, Riker says...
Next
phase. Thank you. Riker talks about how he's going to speak at the funeral, and then Picard says, well, you've known Geordi a long time. And he goes, no, I want to speak about Ro. And Ro's like, what are you going to say about me? Huh? What are you going to say? Huh? We'll find out. I'm not really dead. I might be, but I don't think I am. And Geordi's like, we don't have time for this. We got to go over that Romulan shuttle, figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
But they never find out what he was going to say.
We got to figure out why we're sinking through everything except the floor decks.
Yeah, I know. I know. Just don't get pushed outside that bulkhead, because then you'll be floating. Right. So I really love their relationship, because Ro, it's such a human reaction to have these stereotypes about other cultures and other people, and the stronger the stereotype, the longer it might take to revisit it based on the relationship you have with someone. And we see that with Ro, and we see that with Riker. And then we see that, Larry, if I might give ourselves a little bit of an assist here, we see that with Kira. And we see that with Sisko.
Right. Well,
it's supposed to be more of a dramatic assist.
Who else would be? I'm still baking in pilot hair, Kira. It's just, pilot hair is just a whole. You could teach an academy course on pilot hair, but anyway, pilot hair decisions
and pilot makeup with Odo's makeup.
Look like Ro, yeah. They're trying to make her look like Michelle Forbes.
Yeah. It's not working.
I suppose you want The Office.
Nathaniel's got a great comment here as we pivot to Kira. There are many individual first contacts between Starfleet officers, particularly human, and the problems of Bajoran society, whether in refugee camps or orphanages. However, the best is when Kira dresses down Bashir over referring to Bajor as the frontier. I wonder, Nathaniel, what was the last bit of your comment here? I wonder if this was also the first contact between Nana and Sadig. I don't know, probably not. They had the table read and stuff.
Yeah. Although like Terry wasn't cast until after they started filming. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's
or very, very close to the end. But yeah, they have a table read, and they usually had a pre-shooting lunch. They'd all get together, and Rick would go in and talk to them and all that. Which I want to figure out if something equivalent happened with the Kurtzman shows. But anyway, I digress.
You digress into K3 territory. Nathaniel, it's a great read here because it gets to how Starfleet sees Bajor. They don't necessarily see them as equals. If Julian is referring to them as the frontier, it's the same.
Julian's like on his own, prodigy quest here. He
is. He's got a lot to learn, especially about not being a chauvinist.
He is that green, sir.
Yeah, he didn't complete the Starfleet sexual harassment HR training. If you watch those first few seasons, my goodness, back off. Dax said no. Gosh, Julian.
I don't care if you are a doctor. Okay.
Yeah. It's
I didn't mean hands. I was doing W.C. Fields there. I didn't.
Those are jazz hands, not HR hands.
Yeah, just attitude.
So he but it speaks to a lot of the colonialism that's still kind of there in Starfleet that has been ingrained in Julian's mind, this idea of frontier, of these people who are more that they need the Federation, they need the civility of the Federation, and Julian's going to come and do some of that here. So I'm glad that that's there, because of course that would still be there. There's going to be elements of that because Earth is a part of the Federation. It's been a part of our history. Some of that might seep in.
Yeah. Oh, get off your high horse. Look, what was Vulcan doing to Earth the first 100 years after?
What was Vulcan doing to itself? And
we're just taking care of you. Well, I would have thrown back some. Oh, now I should. Yeah, Melanie has in here. We kind of like, I said, okay, there's a lot of them in original series, and we write the movies and we write to TNG. But Melanie had, if you want to get back to this and throw back, and I'm sorry if I'm disrupting our flow here.
Nothing's disrupting the. I inverse.
Spock is finding T'Pring as something besides just that image in his background.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as far as talking about a person to person, I mean, it's one thing for Kirk and McCoy to, these crazy Vulcans, this isn't in the database, and we've known you for 100 years. Okay, there's that whole thing. We talk about that all the time. But just as a one-to-one thing, Spock and T'Pring, sure, Kirk and McCoy getting the Vulcan thing down, and then also looking at individuals too. But all three of them in their own ways. Only, Kirk and McCoy are trying to survive the situation, survive Spock, let Spock survive, and keep Federation relations intact in a big scope way. And then here's Spock going, I think I'll go meet the woman I'm supposed to marry. Yeah.
Maybe I should do that.
Here's her picture when she was 12, or 8 or whatever she is in that photo. But that's a good, yeah. But I mean, yes, that's excellent, and that's a very classic Star Turn. I just wanted to mention that
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's good. It's a good call out
And
too.
and again, we can talk about some more later through the original series. I did not mean to skip over the original series here by any means. That's what I'm saying.
I did.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh, and we have we have a lot of really great comments here.
He's on fire today.
Yeah. There's a lot. And since we're on the topic of DS9 and Kira as well, Andrew says here, TNG was my first exposure to Star Trek. It took me a few seasons to get into DS9. And I think that a lot of people share some version of that experience, Andrew. Talking about first contact, these small first contacts with different ideas and different concepts and different people. DS9 just looked nothing like Star Trek we had seen. It's Star Trek, Larry, but not as we know it. It was a very different.
Not as we know it. Yeah.
Yeah, look, there was no Federation bridge. The light. It was a literally darkly lit show.
There's fandom off the starboard bow, starboard bow, starboard bar. There's fandom off the starboard bars. No, okay. I'm drawing a parallel here.
I know what you're doing, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
There was
else does.
There's none of that similarity. And look, the pilot starts with Picard. But Picard, our first introduction to Sisko is saying, "Oh, we've met in battle." You're like, what is this series? Oh my gosh.
And Picard says, now do you mean like the episode The Battle? Because I thought that was Ferengis, and I thought that was like 15 years ago.
I love
The Battle.
That would
is this
be
like Emissary and The Emissary, or two different episodes?
I just love imagining Patrick Stewart doing that. Yeah.
And boy voice. That would be.
But yeah, it was so different from everything we were used to. And yeah, sure, TNG was different than TOS, but it took place on the Enterprise. There's a bridge.
Can I hopefully
Please.
not be rude?
You can be rude.
If we keep talking, we're going to take away from my K3.
I immediately backtrack. And let's talk about Star.
We have some other series. Yeah.
Let's talk about one more with DS9. Let's talk about Jem'Hadar.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of great with the Dominion in general. There's a lot of first contacts that we have. This one is.
There's a lot of the Dominion.
Yeah, this is from. Is it The Search? Is that what this episode is from?
No, it's from the Dominion, isn't it?
It's called the Dominion. Yeah, this is this is the first episode with the Defiant. They go out searching for the Founders. They think they find the Founders, but they're actually the Vorta.
No, Defiant. This is end of season 2. They're still in the butter dishes.
Oh, the butter dishes. Yeah, right. So they go.
Oh, the Jem'Hadar. I knew it was something. I knew it was
the Jem'Hadar.
It's called the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
So they're fighting Jem'Hadar. Yeah, they're encountering Jem'Hadar, and she plays that she's a victim at first. But that's part of the thing. They've been getting they really tracked in the Dominion bit by bit, and they're this elusive mystery thing, and they're checking third parties, and the Ferengi are actually helpful, and and they're finding these third parties that deal with the Dominion and trying to get a straight answer from somebody. It's like a congressional investigation. And at the end, then they encounter the Jem'Hadar, the shock troops. But then here she is, and they think they have no concept of the Vorta yet, and they think she's maybe a founder, and they don't know that So they have no idea what the Founders are really like, or the whole setup of the triad of the Dominion, and all who's in charge. That comes when you finally have the reveal in the first two-parter of the next season. But that's part of this, is they're encountering all this and trying to collect data and trying to process and analyze what's going on, and not doing. And then they find out they've been fooled, and she's not with them. She's been faking being a co-prisoner.
And
So
then Cisco says we won't be fooled again, and then they're fooled again all the time by the
he
Dominion.
takes off his
Yeah,
sunny
yeah.
glasses.
I love
CSI Miami, and yeah.
I love, yeah, yeah. I love Cairo's comment here. Oh, the Vorta with the psych power that we never see again. Absolutely.
Oops, too much.
Reel it back in, folks. We don't know how to write about that.
She was a special first contact Vorta,
But
cloned just for that power.
so there's a lot of things I like about the Dominion storyline. Related to our topic today, what I love is how this speaks to the vast series of cultural misunderstandings that can happen from a real failed first contact situation. You just have absolutely no way of understanding someone else's society, how it's structured, how it's built, what their values are, what their motivations are, what their limits are. Cisco's trying here, but is completely failing to understand how this whole organization works, much by design, because the Dominion does not want anyone from the outside to understand. They've, as we found out much later, the founders have been persecuted for so long that they're like, you know what, we're kind of done with that. We're gonna turn the tables around here a little bit.
You salts. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a really great metaphor for how political conflicts and war can really come out of completely missing the boat on understanding where the other person is coming from. Because if Cisco understood that, what's really been going on, maybe it would have been approached differently, or maybe Odo would have been more front and center. Although Odo might not have been ready for that either himself.
He's pretty orderly,
Andrew mentioned this before. Andrew had a comment earlier. Let me see if I can actually pull up your first comment, Andrew. Andrew was talking about his time in the military, and oh my gosh, I should have done this before I started speaking about it. But basically what Andrew was saying is this happens a lot to Americans, especially in the military, completely not understanding the people that you're interacting with.
And what do you got? You got young bucks and young gals, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, going out that haven't been out of their hometown except for boot camp, and now they're thrown into this situation. And
here's a comment. When I was in the military, it was called the ugly American syndrome. Understanding the culture became a must. And then Andrew reiterated, ugly Americans, I encountered this problem many times. Understanding cultures made things go much easier. So yeah, it's a problem we continue to deal with. If anyone is looking for an interesting read, the book World War Z is. The book is fantastic. The movie is terrible. The movie really just takes the name only.
Well, that's a new club.
Yeah, yeah. But one of the things the book really talks about, the book is like an oral history of the zombie war that happened. It takes place like 10 years after the war has ended, and it's this historian going around to different parts of the world to chronicle how they overcame this zombie menace. And one of the big themes in one of the chapters is you're always fighting the last war. Your military complex gets built up to defeat a certain type of enemy, and then you go to fight a new enemy with the same tools you had from the last war and the perspectives, and how that completely failed with the zombies. I think a similar thing really happened here with the Dominion. When is it the Odyssey that's destroyed, Larry? The Galaxy class, yeah. When the Odyssey is taken out in these kamikaze-style attacks, that moment is so, by design, horrifying for you as audience member to see a Galaxy-class ship being taken down that way. But also, the method that they're using is unlike a method that, the Romulans wouldn't do that. We might jut a Sovereign class vessel into them, but they wouldn't do that to us. So it's really quite alarming to see that happen.
Well, yeah, and that was what, 7 years before 9/11 too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about asymmetrical, or like we're all ready to fight this kind of war, and then whoa, it's like the American frontiersmen shooting from trees and the British marching along in rows,
Right.
or something.
Those lobster backs. All right, let's go over to Voyager, and over here we're talking about. We wanted to talk about Equinox, which is one of my favorite two-parters here from Voyager. Voyager's got such great two-parters. But let's talk about Equinox here, Larry. This is the episode where Janeway and company find another Starfleet vessel, the USS Equinox. Beautiful ship design, too. I love that vessel.
They've survived Delta Quadrant in a whole different way. Boo.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they were far more compromising on their Federation values. And they had...
And look who got the series.
Was it? I might be making this up, but was it Captain Pressman?
Ransom.
Where is Preston coming from?
I don't know. I don't know. He's in The Music Man, but go ahead.
Now on Broadway with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
So here, what we learn is the Equinox has imprisoned this alien species. Not imprisoned is not the right word. Enslaved. Enslaved is also not quite the right word. They're doing what the machines in the Matrix do to humans. Whatever that is what Ransom and crew are doing to these aliens. They're using their bodies as fuel to help them get further, faster, higher. And Janeway is not happy about that. And so here we have first contact with Ransom and that crew. We also have first contact with this alien species. And here we are seeing a very strong collision of values. Ransom is on the side of whatever it takes to get our crew home.
Well, to me, it's a lot like the triangle that we had in our Prodigy episode that started this off. You've got aliens, you've got most of the people that kind of have an instinct for what to do, and then you've got the people who are screwing it up, who are from your side supposedly, and you've got to, they were doing something wrong, and you're trying to fix it and fix the damage. But so you've got a two-way front there of, relationship going on. Yes, you do. Which is what they're doing. They're like, you're us, and you're doing this, and you're hurting them, and why? What's the problem with you?
Yeah, and earlier I was talking about how our mind attacks dangerous ideas in the same ways that our body attacks viruses, and here what we're seeing is a deep collision of values, in much the same way that we can see in politics as well. Is we're seeing that collision of Janeway. We will not compromise at all our Starfleet ideals. None of it. And Ransom saying, I'm a captain. My first duty is to my crew to protect them. I'm going to get them home, no matter what it takes. These are two set of values that completely conflict, and they are not... they're not seeing eye to eye by any means here.
Yeah, and it's it's like the epitome of the ultimate. It's Sisko in Pale Moonlight, and it's Archer in the I'll never shove anybody out an airlock like you did. Hey, I've got to shove you out an airlock, or threaten. I mean, but it's that ultimate kind of challenge. But then Janeway has hers in the Void, when she doesn't succumb to Archer's level.
Right.
She finds a way to make these. We're going to all get together to get out of this joint, where they're having to band with others who aren't them to get through a joint crisis. Yay. It's like the Brits and Americans and the Soviets getting through World War II together, kind of sort of barely as allies, and then instantly aren't. So when the common enemy, when the common threat is erased, then the fissures, erupt among the allies or whatever, and that's what is happening here. And some of those, but I mean, it's a good, it's a good. I don't want to say a trope, but it's a good dramatic device. But it pops up, and it happens for every Starfleet captain, and there you go.
Justin says, definitely believe Captain Ransom would have used the caretaker station back to Federation space and left its power with the Kazon. Yeah, I think there's no doubt Ransom would have done that. We can have a much larger debate of if Janeway should have done that. But that's another episode.
He wouldn't have broken the Prime Directive with the Kazon and the.
I know. Yeah. We've got two more examples we wanted to talk about, or three more actually, I think. Let's move in production order, moving forward to Star Trek Enterprise. And Larry, you mentioned just a moment ago 9/11 and the Xindi storyline here. Here we see Archer with the Xindi Council. The Xindi storyline was really Star Trek's response to 9/11 and trying to explore some of the themes, the social commentary of what was happening in the wake of 9/11. So the Xindi Council is really interesting, and that storyline is very interesting because you start in a place of having no understanding at all of who are the Xindi, who are the people behind this attack, what's going on in The Expanse, not that other show, our show. And what happens as that story unfolds more is we learn that the Xindi are not this monolithic alien antagonist species. You learn that there are disagreements, there's factions, there's different perspectives, and some of those people are more aligned over the course of that story with Archer and Starfleet than they are with the other Xindis.
Yes. And it winds up being like 2-2 with the Aquatics being this great, quiet, benign enigma that you can't figure out. But they eventually come over and make it a 3-2. And then when it's a 3-2 split, then the reptilians get pissed, and
If only the poor avians were around. Yeah.
Can you imagine what a 6-way council fight would have been like?
Man. Yeah.
It's really kind of amazing to think that. I mean, it's like you didn't even think to posit this, but along comes one home planet. There's no dominant species of whatever style. There's 6 dominant species that then later on take off and all take off for their own home world. But they all arise with this little indentation in their cheek, whatever you call a cheek. I love how the Aquatics are in there floating, and if you look real close, you can see the little Xindi mark on there.
Oh, I never noticed that.
Oh, yeah, the Xindi all have a little mark on their cheek. That's all of them, no matter what body type or what physiology they are. You're not going to tell it in that thing.
That's pretty cool to show the shared evolution and shared.
Damn it, there's another free mini K3 there for you. Okay.
Well, I'm going to give a little mini counselor's log here. So that is showing this shared evolution on the same planet, right? Which is really cool. We have that as well. We have that in many different... Yeah, we have this in many different ways, but there is something that we share with every other vertebrae on this planet. So all of us, every vertebrae, when our bodies think we are diving into the water, they engage the dive reflex, which calms our body down. It slows our heart rate. It changes blood flow. It slows breathing. It's designed to help us stay alive underwater longer. So whether you are a whale or a human or anything, anything that has a backbone.
Are you talking about mammals only, or are you talking about...
No, any vertebrae. Any vertebrae has this.
Fish, too.
Yeah, we all have this dive reflex. Now, certain animals, certain species do it better than us, but we do it as well. And you can actually trigger this in a very easy way. I've got this video called Oh man, what's it called? Someone will probably be able to share it, but it's about the dive reflex. I think the video is called like the quickest way to calm down or something like that. Anyways, you can trigger it. Just you can fool your body into thinking it just by covering this region with water, and by like dipping your head in like a bowl of water or something, holding your breath for about 15-30 seconds. The dive reflex will be triggered. Your heart rate will slow down. And it's a good way to deal with very high intensity emotions.
How to hack your heart. Okay.
In 3 easy steps. So I think it ties into what you were talking here about the Xindi. They all have that mark, and we all have different marks of our shared ancestry on this planet as well. We're all made of star stuff, Larry. That's what this really comes down to.
No, you have to say we're all made of star stuff.
That's good. That is
Dr.
really
Sagan. Carl Sagan. Yeah,
that's really good, Larry. I didn't know you had a Carl Sagan in you. I didn't know.
It's easy because my college tech director professor was from Wisconsin, and that's the way he talked. So it's just you just make it a little deeper for Carl Sagan. So Johnny Carson's billions and billions of stars and star stuff.
You got to be careful though, because that can dangerously get to Kermit the Frog here. If you go up a few octaves, it can really become Kermit.
Oh, is there a drinking game thing for this? I don't know.
All right, moving forward
we should move along home here.
In production order, Larry. In episode production order, but not series production order. This episode comes next, and this is from Star Trek Picard, The Impossible
Skip right
Box.
over Discovery because I think
you had the Discovery examples.
Every episode of Discovery.
The Discovery example is actually season 3 of Discovery, which came after the Picard. I'm guessing it was filmed
that's
after.
What you're doing. I was just going by series. I just think of all of Discovery before all of Picard. Forget it. Yeah, we can. Yeah. Which is normally the way we do it, just in our own little brains. We think about production. I mean, series, chronological series order, but as a whole. But yeah.
So, Larry, with this,
cut you off on XBs then. So yeah.
This is our first encounter with the XBs.
Mm-hmm. I always want. Do we say XBs? See, some people say XBs, and some people say XBs. Like.
You say tomato, I say tomato. XB. Well, how did they say it in the show?
I think they probably said it both ways. But the point is, what you're trying to say is that what you expect, like I guess if you intellectually hear about former Borgs and you go, oh, okay, well, they're trying to restore their humanity, okay, but then you don't care. And then when you meet them, now Picard's carrying around his own baggage, as we saw. But I mean, still, I think maybe the instinct of people who share the water reflex or whatever,
dive reflex.
People that the reflex is kind of a creep out reflex when it's like looking at reclaimed Frankensteins or something. It's that.
Yeah, I love this storyline. There's so much that I appreciate from it. There's definitely this trauma storyline that we have seen with Picard, and is now this thing that they share in much the same way that trauma can be passed generation to generation. I don't mean like Star Trek generations, like Kirk to Picard. I mean, in a lot of research has been done on Holocaust survivors and how trauma persists from one generation to another as a result of that horrific occurrence. And we see that same thing here with the Borg, that these people are deeply affected by assimilation, and they will continue to be affected by it. And if they have families, it's affected the families and all that sort of stuff. So there's that trauma storyline, but there's also the discrimination storyline, which I think is a similar kind of event as well. If we talk about any type of genocide or refugee population, how people respond to those individuals.
You know what? I thought of the first generation of the AIDS crisis too.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is something that people are talking a lot more about how we responded to AIDS and that epidemic, and looking at COVID, and there's a lot of those stories are resurfacing now. It's the XB storyline speaks to some of that because it's very visual as well, that you are an XB, that you were a part of the collective. And so everyone in this region of space knows the Borg. There's a good chance you know of someone whose life has been affected by the Borg. And so here, standing in front of you, is someone who was a part of that. Now, can you blame them for being assimilated and coming back? No, but you also probably hate the Borg. So it's a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of people to comprehend.
It's Kira in the cave with Damar when they're fighting the Dominion.
Well, now somebody needs to pour out some Kanar, because that is a good example. It's a good example, and it's something that Star Trek does very well. Larry, I really wish the entire first season of Picard was just about the XBs. I would have been a very happy camper. I want to just eat up as much XB as I can. I love that storyline. Good pick. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people here will only have a small first contact with XBs, and then the XBs learn very quickly, we're not really welcome in the rest of society right now. Let's form our own collective here, because we need to stick together and help each other, because we're not really welcome. And I wonder what that does for Picard. Picard can pass as someone who was not previously assimilated. He doesn't have... You know what I mean? He doesn't look like an XB.
It's like he's a light-skinned African American. Is that what you're saying here?
I'm not saying exactly that, but I am saying, like, there's a Netflix movie about that right now. I can't remember the name of it.
There's an old movie from the 50s about that, about the mother that passed.
Yeah. So I think
in society. Yeah.
I think Picard has this very high privilege, but now, of course, everyone knows that he was Locutus. So, maybe it's not quite the same. Anyways, and we can
take an interesting turn.
We could also talk about Seven of Nine and all of that, but that would be a whole nother episode. Let's talk about our last example here, Larry. If I can
do a character episode, we should do 7 of 9. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that would be a really great episode to dive into. We've got one more example that we wanted to dive into from Star Trek Discovery, and this one is coming from season 3 of Star Trek Discovery.
I finally succumbed and came up with one. Yeah.
So this moment right over here, Larry, where we have the leader of the Earth Defense. What are they called?
Whatever.
The Earth Defense.
It sounds like something out of a bad DC comics from the 60s. The Earth Defense Force or something. Yeah.
And this other individual, who I'm completely blanking on his name.
It doesn't matter. They were from Titan. But the point was, it took these cavemen and women from 900 years ago to come out of the amber and go, really? You guys are fighting? They're just more humans. That was in one hand, the simplicity was laughable, but the other hand, it's like, it's exactly, you're black on the left side, you're black on the right side.
A little taste of Armageddon. Yeah.
Little let that be your last battlefield.
Oh, so, yeah. Thank you, Larry. Gosh, very different episodes, similar title.
Culture moves on. Yeah. But I mean, it's that same kind of thing. It's like, this is so simplistically stupid, and oh look, it's humans involved. Okay, it can be simplistically stupid.
Yeah.
As the core reason.
No, I like how the crew of Discovery's like, seriously, you two are fighting? Okay, wow, this bird's pretty bad, huh?
their mask off.
A little Scooby Doo. That would have been great.
Yeah.
But speaking, like, if we dive into this a little bit, we have the people of Titan and the people of Earth have become estranged, and this moment is like a first recontact situation, but here we speak. Here it's about, if you can't come into continuous contact with each other, how differently you can go, how the different directions you can go in. I mean, Larry, this is one of the things when I've mentioned this before on the show, but in 2019, my family moved from New York to California, and we left with this very clear plan of every year we're going to come back. And we're going to come back to maintain our connections and our relationships here in New York. And at the time, my daughter was 2 years old, and it was very important to me that she continue to have a connection with New York City. That never happened because a few months later, the pandemic. Right.
That was us in Oklahoma, by the way, when we moved.
Yeah. I think that's literally what you say whenever I bring this up, which I know I've brought this up many times on the show. But I feel such a greater gap now between my life in New York and here, because it's been so many years now, and I haven't been able to go back. Every time our closest friends from New York were supposed to visit us in December. That trip got canceled because of Omicron. And I don't know when's the next time I'm going to be there. But when you can't easily overcome that geographic distance, people's lives can kind of go in different directions, and we see that with the Titans and the Earthlings, or the Terrans, whatever we want to call it. Well, definitely not Terrans. They're not Terrans.
Plot Terra Nova on Enterprise, when you had the lost colony that nobody, Now Earth knew it was out there, but they just thought, oh, we've lost communication because we're so damn 2100s. But the colonists forgot, they all went underground into mud painting, and they forgot that they forgot their humanity until it was brought back. I mean, it was all kind of conveniently, compressed, and it wasn't it was a conflict in the moment, but it wasn't like this greater conflict. It was just separation. Whereas opposed to here on the post-burn situation with Earth, they were marauding each other. But I like how the marauders, the Titan people, never said, "We're out here dying. Can you share some of your damn stuff with us?" Was nobody talking at all? It was just the collapse of communication.
Yeah, it was a failure to communicate.
And we would have got away with it too if it hadn't been for those damn Earthers. Yeah.
Libby says over here, my brother planned to visit us every year when he moved to New Zealand. Sigh, I totally agree with the gap. It is hard. And New Zealand, Libby, is quite a bigger gap than New Zealand to America is a bigger gap than California to New York. That's a very long journey, and a hard one and an expensive one to take. And Charlotte says of here, then there's a gap that isn't just geographical, but ideological, like me versus some of my more conservative members of my extended family group. And I think that kind of speaks to, Charlotte, what we were talking about with Equinox over here, an ideological gap, difference of sacred values of what's important to you. You're just operating under a very different set of you're operating with a different operating system when it's that kind of situation here. So Larry, I got an idea. I'm looking at the time here. What if I collapse my counselor's log and my my away mission into one segment, which will save us some time for your K3 and save us some time for the hailing frequencies. So Counselor's Log, this is a time of the show where I talk a little bit more in depth, and the away mission is when I give you some tips on what to do. So sort of to combine these two things, Larry, the way I see this right now is there's a lot of small first contacts we're having with other people, with kind of getting out and seeing people again. and sometimes not going out and kind of retracting back in. So I thought what might be useful is just to talk a little bit more about how the best ways to make that first contact be fruitful, be beneficial. Because one of the things here, Larry, I think we see this in Star Trek and a lot of the examples that we've seen, is we tend to be anxious in new situations. This is part of what anxiety does. A lot of times we'll be at a new playground and my daughter is doing a new thing for the first time and she'll say, "Daddy, I'm scared." And I'll be like, it's okay to be scared, because it makes you more focused. It helps you to prepare. It helps you to take this thing more seriously. And it helps you to... We'll say that again, Larry?
It's like stage fright. It's
yeah.
focusing.
Yeah, you should. Yes. Good. Good is when
butterflies in your stomach. Yeah.
I was talking to someone who was interviewing for a new job, and they said, "I'm really scared." And I literally said, "Good. You're gonna take it more seriously. You're gonna be focused. You're gonna prepare." Blah 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 blah. So this is true of people as well. When you meet someone for the first time, you are going to be a bit more on edge. You are going to be a bit more nervous. You are going to be probably feeling a bit more social anxiety. And in this climate that we're in with the pandemic, you might be actually more concerned about your safety as well. Is this person taking the risk of COVID as similarly as I am? And I think that works both ways, Larry. For people who are trying to be more concerned about this, is that other person at that same level of concern as me? And then the people who might not be taking this as seriously, is this other person seeing things the same way as me too? Because I don't want to be hanging out with someone who is going to be judging me for not wearing a mask or stuff like that. Wear your mask, people. Anyways, Larry, the getting over to the away mission part of this a little bit more, what I wanted to share is, if there is someone that you want to have more contact with, one thing to know is as you become a more familiar entity, people's anxiety does come down. And so you'll see this with, remember the olden days, Larry? We used to go to coffee shops. There are these great places you could go and hang out indoors and just stay there and not worry about aerosols and stuff like that. But did you
Take
ever...
your horse-drawn carriage right down to the coffee
right,
shop,
right. Haven't these people invented electricity yet? Did you ever have the experience where you recognize certain people at the coffee shop? You don't know their name, but you've seen them there all the time, and you just feel a little bit more comfortable. Oh, there's that guy that's always reading the newspaper over there. Have you ever had that experience, Larry?
Well, as someone who's not a coffee drinker, so I've never, but it's been 30 years, so coffee shops and whatever. In indies, or from Starbucks all the way down to mom and pops. But no, I mean, it's that thing of, it's seeing people, you have a neighborhood grocery store, supermarket,
Yep.
and you go in and you see some of the, if not the customers, maybe at least the employees. You don't know them, but you know they're there and it's your store, or you go to, right, wherever it is that you go to, or people in the park, or right.
So, and that's exactly what I'm talking about.
People on the lot. Boy, I'm really digging in there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. When we see people, our ability to recognize is better than our ability to recall. And what I mean by that is it's very easy to know if this is someone or a place or something that you've seen before. Even though you might not remember the name of that person, it's very easy to recognize that person. Even when people have very profound memory problems, the ability to know if you've seen someone before is very persistent. And so when we want to make these first contacts, and when you might want to meet someone new or talk to someone who you haven't really spoken to, the first thing to do is always try to make yourself familiar. Try to show up consistently in the same way to these different places, or approach someone that you might recognize, that you've seen many times. So if you're at the lot, if you're at a coffee shop, that local grocery store, whatever it might be, approach someone that you've seen many times. And then the second thing I want to share here is always there's one thing you always have in common with another person. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what's important to you, there's always one thing you have in common with the other person. And that's you're always at the same place at the same time. And so the second thing I advise people, if you want to make these first contacts, is focus on that thing you share in common. You're at the same place at the same time. This is one reason why people talk about the weather so much. This is if you're at a bus stop, you're both going somewhere. If you are at a birthday party for someone, you both are there for this party for this one person. Those are always your entries into conversation, is that shared experience. And the way to do that, Larry, is through what's called an open-ended question. This is when you're asking a question that doesn't have a yes or no
what's
answer.
that?
Ha ha! There you go. There you go. You know your way around these questions. This is, I mean, great interviewers do this all the time. And it's when you ask a question like this, like, Larry, what do you like to do for fun? That's an open-ended question. It can go in so many different directions. Versus, Larry, what's your favorite video game? Now, if I ask you that and you don't play video games, you're going to say, well, I don't play anything. Conversation shuts down. But if I ask you, what do you like to do for fun? Well, now the conversation can go in a wide variety of angles. You ask these open-ended questions till you get to a point of shared frame of reference, shared interest, and then bada bing, bada boom, you're away and running. But
it's your last fun show before the Dominion finale. Okay. Sorry, you're gonna.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, Larry, that's what I've got here for the away mission, as well as the counselor's log.
See how I did that shared thing there to kind of bridge the thing?
You bridged the generations there, and much of
the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. With that, Larry, you got something in store for us. What do you got for the K3 factor?
Well, the K3 factor, which is my deep dive on what I do here for Trek, it's kind of short and simple, and with something we've talked about before, but I'm applying this filter of first contact to it, or small first contacts, to explain. And this blew up in 2017 when Discovery came out, and a huge chunk of fandom was, for whatever reason, was aghast at Discovery, and somewhere between I won't watch it to I'm going to go out and go online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and talk about how I hate Discovery and you should too. That's kind of a spectrum. But it's like and part of the pushback on that was, well, we might not have something we don't like about it, but number one, the show will evolve because that's what they all do, and number two, some of you kids don't remember when every new iteration of a Star Trek in many ways had a wall of resistance, and it was people being afraid for the new. But it dawned on me that that some of this we're talking about small first contacts, you could apply that to when a new Star Trek comes out, or you could use it to explain why the fandom reacts, maybe in a less obvious way, maybe a little deeper way. I don't know. Because it occurred to me, go ahead and this is such a wonderful slide that I put together, but I did. At 3 a.m, I did this. It's like basically your paradigm has changed and you're not used to it yet. And we talk about, well, it's like what I like and the new thing is not giving me what I like. But you've got original Star Trek, which was, it was leads and supporting cast, lead, second banana, supporting cast. Well, 20 years of now we're into ensemble casting, so that's what this is. Also, the audience is much more comfortable with the computer, and the technological revolution is 20 years further along than it was, and TV production doability was 20 years further along than the 60s. So it was just different. And it seems like some of these things we're talking about, it's not just, it's different, but I'm going to figure it out. It's like, well, how do you do that? It's some of the pointers you were just giving. But it's kind of us being taken unaware. We're coasting that whole thing about fight the next war the way you fought the last one. It's kind of like enjoy the next Star Trek the way you enjoyed the last one. it's kind of like we bring our, well, this is what I did, and or this is the way I found it, and or this is the way I do it now. And then you come up against a new one, and people who are working in the industry, they don't want to make something the way it was made 20 years ago, and they're not in historical museum recreation.
No.
Leave that to a fan film, a good one. But, it's like that's not what they're doing. They're trying to be a part of the television and entertainment culture of today. So it's a lens thing. But then Star Trek sets itself up like no other franchise that's in the, aspirational future, whatever, to have a continuity. So how do you explain that? And, eventually people got it that, oh, we're 80 years later. That's the surface thing, and then we're going to tell stories this way. And we're not trying to reboot. We're not trying to kick out the original. But it took people a while to get that. And a lot of people just dropped off and didn't watch Next Generation. But by the time of Best of Both Worlds and the numbers blew up, the week numbers were, 8 or 10 times what they were for the original series in its heyday. And yeah, there were 20 years more population and 20 years more sci-fi fans by then. But that was a thing. And then you turn around and look at Next Gen to the Kelvin movies, or I had Discovery up there. And now you've got week-to-week standalone stories, 26 a year versus 12 or 13 serialized. I mean, just the whole paradigm of, and you have to buy an app, a streaming app to watch it versus see it on free TV. It's just that all the conditions were different. And it wasn't about, oh, it's new and I want my old. It was just about, there's a lot of things have shifted. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is those are all the facts at play. But the thing is, everything changes over time. And sometimes our problems with small first contacts is just having our sensors calibrated to remember that I'm not just looking for intelligent, I'm not just looking for more new life. This might be silicon life instead of carbon-based life, or this might be gaseous life, not, solid life, or mutable, changeable, shapeshifty life, not, and what does a virus look like in a shapeshifter, and what is this, it's just that whole paradigm has to change. And once people got that Next Gen was not replacing Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, it was adding to it. It was like making the picture bigger, and it wasn't a threat. And people were like, oh, okay. But it was such a shock to the system. A lot of people got it if they were hungry for more Star Trek. But a lot of people, it was, and it's not that they were closed-minded. It's just that was emotionally near and dear to them, but also, are they equipped? Did they get the manual? Now, when you come up to this new show, remember, here's the 8 things to remember. Like when you come up to, and some of us tried to do that with Discovery. Now, when you watch this new show, remember, it's not different stories. It's not 26 stories a year. It's 12 chapters in a book, So I don't know. Is this making sense? It dawned on me as we were talking about this for episodes, because a lot of this small first contact is about not just what's happening, but how are you open to it, and then how are you open to processing it once you get it, and can you just turn your perspective a little bit, and it all makes sense. It's like a key in a lock that won't go, and if you just turn it the right way, all of a sudden everything is open to you. That was a bad metaphor, but when we're used to going along then a certain way, and it's worked for 99% of what we did, and you meet somebody new like a Ro or like a Discovery, sometimes you've got to back up and remember to take stuff in before you even unconsciously shut things down or dismiss things or be blind to something that you didn't catch. Is any of this making sense?
It totally makes sense, Larry. And I think it is something we experience with Star Trek. I think Whovians experience this every few years with a new Doctor. I think it's something fans of Star Wars continue to experience. There's not a ton of these franchises that have continued and persisted as long as Star Trek, Doctor Who, and Star Wars have. but those that have, you continue to see this change. And it's interesting because you compare this to someone mentioned earlier
well, I mean, we've talked about dealing with change before and how we eventually get used to it, but I just thought that this was maybe a different take on
it is. Glinda earlier said, has Ollie been playing Fallout 4? I haven't. I think I played Fallout 2. I haven't played any of the other ones. But Glinda, you're talking evoking video games is interesting because video games, they always change dramatically with each version. The look, the feel, the gameplay. And sometimes people do get really upset with those changes. But in general, it's accepted that a video game is going to change with each subsequent version of it. And it's going to evolve in its look and feel and control and all of that. And we have a harder time doing that with Star Trek than we do with video games. Larry, we got one thing we should really mention. Star Trek's we should mention before we get into hailing frequencies. I want to talk about this. We got something really cool happening, actually starting at the top of the hour here.
It's as soon as we're off, you can flip over to the Trek Talks, which is a huge project. It's benefiting Hollywood Food Coalition and their partners here, which came to Star Trek's attention via John Billingsley, our own Dr. Phil Phlox. Who's that's his passion project. He didn't start it. It's been around for 40 years almost, 35 years. But it's 8 hours organized by the Trek Geeks podcast guys, Dan and Bill, and by Roddenberry, and my friend John is co-producing this, and John Billingsley. But there are over 60 Trek people through the day, some of them in solos, some in panels. Jerry Ryan, Jonathan, the new show, the showrunners on Prodigy. There's a lot of writers and behind-the-scenes folks, and a lot of people from legacy shows and folks from the new show too. And there's like a director's panel, and there's a behind-the-scenes, but there's all kinds of stuff. I am moderating a panel about the Center Seat documentary series with their Brian Volk-Weiss, who's the head of the Toys That Made Us, and some other things.
I love that series.
Yeah, Gates is the voice narrator of it, so this will be fun. And then my friend John and Mary Jo, Maria Jose Tenuto in Chicago, who were an expert and authors and speakers, and they were in it. And then I'm moderator, but I was also in Center Seats. So that's at 1:24 is the technical time. But there are there's like 15 or 16 half-hour panels through the day. And the whole thing is like an old school telethon or a webathon. And it's just to get people to make, $1 or whatever to, and they tell you where to go and how to do that. But what was it? Trek Talks, trektalks.net is a view window. There's many places you can see it, but that's the central. It's the information. It's the donor link. It's how to watch. And Jay Stobie's Galaxy, his Twitter is a way to live tweet. He's going to be doing a live tweet. So there's no stream next to the thing, next to the view screen. So but fans can interact at his Twitter. So anyway, it's all there, trektalks.net if you want to go. They're doing a pre-show right now, but as soon as we're off, everybody can flip over there, and then I'll be on there for about a half hour in about 90 minutes.
And let's hit up some of our great comments here, just starting with what Glinda just said.
There's so many.
The video game community has elements that need a psych study all their own. Yes, Glinda, there's been a lot of toxicity recently in the video game industry. I'm going to pull out a resource to kind of that actually I think is really pertinent here, so I'll speak to that in a moment. Cairo had the eternal question here. Here's a real question. Would Ransom have killed Tuvix? Now I go and hide. Cairo, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Ransom would have been like, I like this guy better. Let's keep him.
Oh, he's here and now. Who cares about those other two guys? I don't care who's got a better contract. He's here.
Charlotte was talking about Small First Contact's Data's Day, his navigating human customs, emotions, and reactions, and then, of course, navigating an episode where Data gets a girlfriend. Absolutely. That's a great example here of Small First Contacts. And then Charlotte also says, not to diminish Picard's trauma, but he was a Borg for a much shorter time than, say, Seven of Nine. His trauma is much more acute, whereas Seven is much more complex. And it's chronic, Seven's trauma. And what we see with chronic trauma is exactly what plays out with Picard and Seven. Chronic trauma ends up impacting your identity, how you see yourself, whereas more of a episodic trauma, a one limited incident, is much more what we see with Picard. So great pull there. Libby has a comment about having a family member or a friend's family member who was going through Alzheimer's. And this is why, for a lot of people who are experiencing some type of dementia, you want them to be in places where they recognize things, because that recognition aspect of memory is so much more persistent than the other aspects. And Andrew said there's no bravery without fear. And I talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable with people all the time. It is in the definition of being brave and courageous, Larry. It's not the absence of fear, but it's being afraid and doing that thing anyways. That's what makes you brave. That is what makes you courageous. So thank you, Andrew, for saying that. Larry, any comments you want to... I've been going on a...
There's a lot of random stuff. I think everybody had a good time today. Andrew here is saying, why does Larry sing anytime when... Some of these are so out of context now, and it's been so long since I'm looking like an hour ago almost, but... why did I sing anytime any of your comments is read? They're yeah.
Because we can. Because we can. Because we can. Boom, boop, boop. Last Broadway show I saw, Moulin Rouge. Good show.
Yeah.
Charlotte says, I'm good with faces, not so much names. That's because of recognition and how strong that is. Charlotte also says, Worf sharing the Klingon tea ceremony with Pulaski. Pulaski is also a great character that we don't dive into in as much detail, Larry. I love Pulaski. Glinda said at a SCA event once, there was a group of people watching and wandering from camp to camp saying, "We are the Bob, resistance is futile." And people enjoyed them and go to the next camp and repeat.
The SCA, for those of you who don't know, is the medieval recreationists with the whole hierarchy and bureaucracy and role-playing persona, and yeah,
that was good. Justin way long ago talked about Data meeting his mom. That's another great example of the small first contact. And Nathaniel mentioned, we got a couple of Bruins here, Nathaniel and I. Hiding away in Kirchhoff Coffee House describes my undergrad experience. Nathaniel, I actually didn't spend much time at all there. I didn't drink coffee until grad school. So I actually didn't. I only went there for like club meetings or if I had to meet with someone.
Grad school, the caffeine frontier for you, huh?
Well, Larry, we are at that time of the show. We're at that time where I bore everyone.
Yeah. You have a heart out. Yes.
Folks, please navigate your browser over to trektalks.net. A lot of really good stuff for a very good cause is now underway right over there at trektalks.net. You will see our own Dr. Trek, Larry Nemeczek, right there in a moment. Well, a little bit more than a moment.
And a lot of faces, you'll know.
Yeah.
And some you won't know.
Yeah. Larry, between now and next week, what do you got cooking over at Trekland?
Just, Tuesdays live at 1 Tuesday Pacific, 4 Eastern. Love for everybody to come over there. Where you're watching us right now, all these Trekline channels. And the Trek Files is still on hiatus, but we'll be back in February. And been looking at the con season. Hopefully we can keep reopening up this spring. So, stay tuned on that. But that's it for right now. Today's going to be a big thing to get through, so looking forward to that. Yeah,
you've been doing a lot of stuff. Well, I am just doing things. I don't know what I'm doing. My daughter's school was closed this week because we had a COVID case over there. Thankfully, my daughter's okay, but that's also the reason I have to leave here right on the dot, I have to go get a COVID test for everyone in our family to make sure she's okay to go back. We've all been happy and healthy. Well, we've been healthy. It's been hard. It's been a hard week with everyone, but that's why I got to jump on right on the dot, and we got Trek Talks going on as well. So I will be back next week, and we'll probably be inspired again by Star Trek Prodigy, and we'll see where that takes us. If you all haven't seen Prodigy yet, please do check out the last couple episodes. They're really lovely. If you love Voyager and if you love Star Trek, there's a lot to enjoy in the last couple episodes. Until then, Larry. Until next week. I am Dr. Ali. You are Dr. Trek. We're gonna keep on boldly going. And until then, Larry, I hope you all live long and prosper.
The way you always shove it at the camera. Trek well, everybody.
Bye-bye, folks.